Today, companies weighing whether to mandate vaccines for workers returning to the office. It says the feds announced employers can legally do so. They still have to accommodate some exemptions. Bitcoin's on track for one of its worst months ever, with a crackdown in China and U.S. officials signaling tighter regulations to come. And Americans are spending more and more money on pets. We break down the costs of owning one. And much more, coming up at NTD Business. Good evening. Great to have you with us. The U.S. government says companies can require workers to get vaccinated against the CCP virus or coronavirus. But there are a couple of exceptions. NTD's Colin Fredrickson has the details.
Get vaccinated or get fired. Could this be your company's future policy? The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission announced Friday its laws do not prevent an employer from requiring all employees physically entering the workplace to be vaccinated for COVID-19, with two legal exceptions.
One is if an employee has a valid medical exception, and the other is if the employee has a religious objection to being vaccinated, and that would be protected by Title VII of the Civil Rights Act.
Law firm Kluger-Healy represents several hundred employers, all of whom have to look at this issue.
Most of the employers that we represent have really just been encouraging their employees to be vaccinated. Only a handful are considering, and none have yet to mandate it.
About 40% of Americans are fully vaccinated. Kluger says he believes we're going to see the number of voluntary vaccinations capping off. Then employers will have to decide whether to require the vaccine or allow employees to remain unvaccinated. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
You don't need to wear a mask at the movies anymore if you're vaccinated. AMC, Cinemark, Regal Cinemas are all dropping the mandate. If you're not vaccinated, you'll still have to wear one, unless you're eating or drinking. The theaters, they will keep cleaning and social distancing measures in place, though. People, of course, starting to go back to the movies again during the pandemic. Pretty much all of them were closed, and movie makers even stopped releasing new flicks. Bitcoin gained today, but never really recovered from its fall earlier this month. It's on track for its second worst month on record. It's down by more than 35% in May. That's second only to September 2011 when it fell 40%. It's sitting at around $37,000, about half its April peak value of $65,000. Second largest coin, Ether, is on track for its first monthly loss since September 2020. Cryptocurrencies may be feeling growing regulatory pressures. Last week, the Securities and Exchange Commission said it wants to bring similar protections to crypto exchanges you might find at the New York Stock Exchange or the Nasdaq. It comes after China recently launched efforts to crack down on crypto mining. And the SEC is also trying to recover money from an alleged cryptocurrency Ponzi scheme. It's charging 5 people for their alleged involvement in the Bitconnect crypto platform. It collapsed in 2018 after taking $2 billion from hopeful investors. NTD's Patrick Hayden reports.
The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, on Friday charged 5 individuals for promoting an unregistered digital assets offering. The company, Bitconnect, raised more than $2 billion from retail investors. It then collapsed in 2018. The SEC says they allegedly organized a global network of promoters through referral commissions. They then used the network to sell securities without registering them. Federal law requires securities and the seller to be registered. The SEC says that 4 of them promoted advertising to prospective investors through YouTube videos. The 5th person charged represented Bitconnect at conferences. The SEC said it will seek to hold accountable those who illegally profit by capitalizing on the public's interest in digital assets. The complaint seeks to get the money back and pursue civil penalties. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
Nestlé says it's working on updating its nutrition and health strategy. 60% of its food and drinks were described as unhealthy in an internal document. Well, it was actually an internal presentation circulated among top executives. The Financial Times broke the news. Now, Nestlé says it's working on a company-wide project to make its products healthier. It says it reduced the amount of sugars and salt in its products by about 14 to 15% in the past 7 years and will continue to make improvements. And Americans spent over $100 billion on their pets last year. That's up several $billion from the year before, according to the American Pet Products Association. NTD's Phil Zhou tells us what it typically costs to own a cat or dog.
Are you thinking of getting a pet? A lot of people are adopting dogs and cats, especially since the pandemic hit.
It's just nice to have that kind of love and support.
Americans spent $100 billion on pets in 2020. That's up from $97 billion in 2019. Stephanie just adopted her dog last month.
But I buy her a lot of clothes, a lot of toys, a lot of treats. Right now she has on 2 jackets. I have a sling carrier that I carry her around in. I have treats in my bag.
Most costs go towards pet food and treats, along with medical care. Jacqueline Bensai got her dog 8 years ago. She even cooks organic for him.
I spend so much money on Walter, it's not even funny. It's not even funny.
Adopting a dog or cat can cost between $1,000 to $3,000 in the first year. That usually includes everything, including the adoption fee, spaying or neutering, food and supplies. After that, costs can go up to $2,000 to $4,000 each year. Now, before getting a pet, make sure you do some research.
You really have to research the breeds and make sure that you're getting a breed that fits your personality.
And take some time off in the beginning to get to know your pet.
She's really well socialized, because I bring her everywhere. She's good in cars, she's good with other people, she's really friendly. See, she's pretty well behaved. So you need time off to at least 2 weeks when you first bring a pet home.
In addition to annual costs, make sure you have an emergency fund for unexpected medical or veterinary visits. Phil Zhou, NTD News, New York.
The ASPCA says dogs and cats are usually with owners for 10 years or so, so make sure you're aware it's a long-term commitment before getting one. Unless you're flying first or business class, there is no booze on American Airlines flights till September 13th. That's the same day the TSA's mask mandate ends for all planes. The decision to extend the alcohol ban follows a recent assault of a Southwest flight attendant that resulted in a serious injury. American first suspended alcohol sales in main cabins in March of 2020 to limit interaction between crew and passengers. American's ban comes after Southwest says it's delaying the return of alcohol because of the incident we just mentioned. An online second-hand shop called Sellpy is betting on the sustainable fashion trend. It's backed by fashion giant H&M and is now planning to open in more than 20 European countries. Sellpy says second-hand is one of the industry's fastest-growing market segments, but it's increasingly coming under scrutiny for fueling a throwaway culture. At the same time, consumers are becoming more conscious about the sustainability of their clothes. H&M was looking for additional sources of income when business slowed recently, so it bought its first stake in Sellpy in 2015. Since then, it's invested almost $25 million in the company and owns about 70% of it. And H&M isn't the only big brand trying to get in on the thrift trend. Some others are also partnering up with companies to resell used items for less. Here's NTD's Evelyn Lee with more.
Young shoppers flock to thrift stores and online sites to buy used clothes. Now a growing number of fashion companies want to take back control.
Any premium brand that makes beautiful designs, makes beautiful items, will be in the resale space.
But the resale business is complicated. So some of the big iconic names like Levi's, Patagonia, or Lululemon are turning to companies like Trove for help. As a tech startup, Trove handles the logistics of taking back merchandise and preparing it for resale.
And we work with them to optimize the program for them and the brand.
Customers of these brands trade in gently used items in a store or by mail in exchange for a gift card. And shoppers looking for second-hand goods can then buy these items. And they can expect to save 40 to 50% on them. Trove is facing increasing competition now, especially from resale marketplaces like ThredUp and Poshmark.
So the trend has been going on for years before the pandemic. The pandemic accelerated in several ways. One was e-commerce.
Rubin says another reason is that during the pandemic, shoppers have become more introspective and are putting more thought into how they shop and what they buy. And there is still plenty of room to grow. According to research from Global Data, the total resale market is worth about $30 billion and should increase to $64 billion by 2024. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
And apparently some progress in the infrastructure package discussions. A top Republican negotiator says the two parties are getting closer to a deal. Zachary Goldman reports.
Negotiations between U.S. Democratic President Joe Biden and Republican senators over an infrastructure package are inching forward, even though disagreements remain. Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito told Fox News Sunday, quote, "I think we can get to real compromise, absolutely, because we're both still in the game." Capito leads a group of 6 Republicans who have been in regular contact with the White House. Her side last week proposed $928 billion to improve roads, bridges, and other traditional infrastructure projects. Much of the funding would come from reallocating money meant for other programs. The Biden administration's latest offer in negotiations is for $1.7 trillion and would include projects such as home care for the elderly. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg described negotiations to ABC's This Week, saying, quote, "There's movement in the right direction, but a lot of concerns." One of the many sticking points, the White House wants to offset the cost of the plan with new taxes on the wealthy and on corporations. When asked about rolling back some of the tax cuts enacted during the Trump administration, Capito said, quote, "I'm not going to vote to overturn those." She also held the line against funding for projects that go beyond physical infrastructure. The talks were expected to continue this week, even though Congress is on a break, with the Senate returning on June 7th.
And the U.S. economy could be recovering faster than expected. That's according to the OECD. But the organization also predicts growth to slow as massive stimulus fades. NTD's Colin Fredrickson has the details.
The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development says the U.S. will grow faster than it expected earlier this year. Citing a rapid vaccination campaign and a big fiscal stimulus boost, the OECD sees the U.S. economy growing by 6.9% in 2021. That's nearly half a percentage point up from its previous estimate of 6.5%. But the OECD also lowered its U.S. growth projection for next year. It sees the U.S. economy growing by 3.6% in 2022, a downward revision from its earlier projection of 4%. The OECD expects growth to slow down next year as the stimulus expires. The Biden administration's proposed new spending packages, amounting to around $4 trillion, have not been factored into the baseline projections. A downside risk to growth next year is inflation picking up more sharply, forcing the Fed to raise interest rates and cooling the economy. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
And hundreds of local governments and schools in the U.S. are still buying surveillance products from blacklisted Chinese tech companies. That's despite a federal ban. Here's the details.
Local-level government organizations in the U.S. are still buying surveillance products from 2 blacklisted Chinese companies. According to government contract data, more than 300 government organizations, such as cities, counties, towns, and schools, have purchased from China's Hikvision and Dahua Technology after the federal government had banned them. Pennsylvania-based video surveillance research firm IPVM reviewed the deals based on government contracts that a Florida tech company obtained. The U.S. Commerce Department added the 2 Chinese companies to its blacklist in October 2019. It was for their role in supporting the Chinese Communist regime's human rights abuses in China's Xinjiang region. Beijing has been abusing ethnic and religious minorities in Xinjiang through torture, forced sterilizations, political indoctrination, and forced labor. The U.S., the U.K., Canada, and the Netherlands have denounced the abuses as genocide. In March this year, the U.S. Federal Communications Commission designated Hikvision and Dahua as companies that pose a threat to national security. 3 other Chinese companies also received the same designation. They are tech firms Huawei, ZTE, and Hytera Communications.
And China's one-child policy is now a 3-child policy. Its rapidly aging population is straining the country's economy and society. Recent data shows a sharp decline in the number of births there. Libby Hogan tells us more about this major policy shift and how people are reacting to it.
In a major policy shift, China on Monday said it will now allow married couples to have 3 children, up from its existing limit of 2. This comes off the back of the country recording a dramatic decline in births. Earlier this month, China's once-in-a-decade census showed that the population grew at its slowest rate during the last decade since the 1950s. In a poll online with the hashtag #AreYouReady for the 3-child policy, about 29,000 of 31,000 respondents said they would never think of it, while the remainder chose the options ranging from "I'm ready and very eager to do so" to "I'm hesitating and there's a lot to consider." That poll on Shenhua's Weibo account was later removed. Reactions to the announcement were also mixed.
If there are conditions, then we'd have more kids. Nowadays, young people have to buy a house, and this amount of pressure is already huge. And then you have to consider the cost of education. I think this sort of policy will be difficult to implement.
China abolished its decades-old one-child policy in 2016 and began allowing couples to have up to 2 children. But the cost of raising children in Chinese cities has deterred many couples from starting families.
British retailers have racked up over $4 billion in unpaid rent during the pandemic. With the eviction ban ending soon, closures are looming. NTD's Patrick Hayden has the story.
Commercial retailers in the UK are taking legal action to deal with over $4 billion of unpaid retail rent. Without government intervention, thousands of shops could be forced to close. That's after they've weathered the pandemic. 2/3 of retailers are now bracing for aggressive legal action once the eviction moratorium finishes at the end of June. A survey of retailers by the British Retail Consortium, or BRC, says nearly 1/3 of retailers have already faced county court judgments from their commercial landlords. And 80% of tenants say landlords have given them less than a year to pay back the late rent. BRC Chief Executive Helen Dickinson says the government must ring-fence the debt and give retailers some breathing space. The BBC reports that 1 in 7 shops lie empty, and that number is expected to rise. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
Still to come this evening. It might soon cost you more to mail a letter. The US Postal Service wants to charge more for stamps as it tries to get out of a financial black hole. And want to enjoy riding your bike but don't want to sweat? A British company helps you convert any bike into an electric one. Find out how it works after this short break.
What does it mean to devote your life to the truth? Does it mean investigating communist subversion here in America? Does it mean exposing the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Midwest? Or spending late nights and covering deep government corruption? Does it mean persevering over 20 years? Even after 4 masked men set one of our printing presses on fire last year. Because at a time when America's traditional values are under attack, it's the responsibility of righteous journalists to uphold truth and tradition.
The U.S. Postal Service wants to raise the price of stamps. Prices have already steadily been rising over the past few years. Mailing a letter cost 49 cents in 2017, now it's 55 cents. On Friday, the USPS proposed raising it to 58 cents. The Postmaster General is pursuing sweeping changes with an eye on the agency's finances. It's in response to lagging mail volume. In March, he announced a 10-year plan for the struggling agency that included longer first-class mail delivery times and cuts to post office hours across the country. The agency says if the price increase is approved, it would take effect on August 29th. And a Washington State man's dream of creating his own engagement ring for his future bride is coming true. It's all thanks to a very lucky find. 26-year-old Christian Liddon panned for gold in his home state, and after 5 years, he had enough to make the band. Then it was time to look for the diamond, so he drove out of Arkansas, creator of Diamond State Park, to find the rock. After 3 days in Arkansas using his own homemade mining equipment, he turned up a 2.2 carat yellow diamond. It's the largest that's been found at the park since last October. That was when a visitor found a 4.5 carat yellow diamond. Back home, Little pulled out the diamond to propose, and his girlfriend said yes. The two haven't found a jeweler to mount the stone yet, but Liddon says they're not in any hurry. And electric bikes can help people to get from A to B without breaking a sweat. And now one London company specializes in making and selling kits to convert even the most ancient piece of pedal power to electric. NTD's Neil Woodrow went to try it out.
Electric bikes have been gaining popularity since the 1990s. A British company called Switch can help you convert your personal two wheels into an e-bike. The London-based tech startup is the creative force behind the Switch e-bike kit. We visited the company to learn more about their product and story from their CEO, co-founder and inventor of their e-bike kit.
The idea came about because I used to sell all manner of electric bike kits, and I was looking for one kit that would work on any bike. I looked for a few years, didn't find it, and then had the epiphany that if I could fit all of the components of an electric bike into one little power pack that fit onto the handlebars like this, it would work on any bike. And here we are. So,
after the original idea in 2017, they launched a successful crowdfunding campaign.
2 years later, we re-engineered the kit to make it significantly smaller and lighter.
They cut its weight by half to less than 1.5 kilograms, keeping its power at 250 kilowatts, the legal limit for electric bikes. On average, it will achieve 16 miles per hour and 31 miles distance on a single charge. The kit acts as an aid to your own cycling power. Turning the power up will assist your pedalling more. Oliver says it's a very simple routine to fit the kit.
Pretty much anyone can do it themselves at home. You only need 2 tools, a spanner and an Allen key.
First, you lose the original wheel. The new powered switch wheel is tightened on. The wheel is ordered to match the original size. Then the handlebar bracket is fixed where the power pack will be fitted. The power wheel is connected and the power pack fitted in place, and then the wheel is powered. Sales of the e-bike kit have been going well.
Well, in 2020 we helped over 20,000 new customers turn their bikes into electric switch bikes, and we're forecasting at least 30,000 this year in 2021.
I asked Montague if the pandemic has helped his business.
The cycling market is growing extremely fast. I'm sure that lockdown helped to kickstart some behaviour and get more people cycling, but we believe this is only the start of a cycling revolution, and we're forecasting significant further growth in the next 10 years.
He says his turnover has grown exponentially over the last 3 years. The kit's standard retail price starts at £1,000, about half that of your average good quality electric bike. So, does this kit fit any bike?
If your bike has a wheel and handlebars, the Switch kit will fit.
Even a penny farthing?
Even a penny farthing, yes. Here you have it, a Switch penny farthing.
Wow, but I'm in a suit.
Okay, good point. I have just the thing for you.
So now we've learned all about the Switch e-bike, I'm going to ride one. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, London.
Thanks, Neil. That's the latest business updates for today. You can still catch NTD Evening News with Stephanie Cox that starts at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.